Okay, right. So I hope if you have set up your environment, you can, of course, you will not be able to do it parallelly with me. So you must do it after the session. After the online session, you must be able to do it. At the end of the session, I will share all the code. So the idea is you can just copy paste the code, right? Because this is not memorizing code. But the important thing is you get a feeling of how how do we do these enterprise level development and familiar with the IDs and so on. Okay. Right. So the prerequisite is you have downloaded the Eclipse Neon. Okay. And also you have set up your Wildfly server. Of course, I'm using a little bit older version because especially the EJB that your notes referring to is the older EJB. So otherwise we need to go for a different configuration. But if you are using the latest technologies, that is fine. I'm okay with that. But only thing is the EJB concept will be slightly different. Okay. So therefore, make sure go through the either you use the latest technologies, latest Eclipse or whatever. I don't mind. Only thing is the EJB concepts are slightly different. But or else just go through according to what I explained in this video also. Right, this video also, and set up your environment. And you need to have the JDK 1.8, then the Eclipse Neon. So everything is explained here. And of course, the document. Use the exact versions, right? Exact versions. And if you get any error, try to figure it out by yourself, or else just get the help from me. I'm willing to give you the help at any time, right? If you just send me a message, I will try to help you with messaging, or else I will ask you to give a call, or even ask you to share your screen and see your error. Okay, right. So I have my Eclipse up and running. Okay. And also I have configured the Wildfly server, right? Wildfly server, which I can start at any time, start and stop at any time. So that is something you must have, either you must have done up to now or do it by yourself. Of course, if you have any issues, I can help you by following this recording, right? Following this recording, okay? Right. So my environment is set up. So first we will finish the servlet JSP. Actually, I did a start to the servlet and JSP last time, but I just want to start fresh and today concentrate 100% on servlet and JSP. Right. So remember, servlet JSP and servlet are server side Java, just like PHP. Okay. So let me open the note. Right. So when it comes to web applications, we have the client-side technologies, server-side technologies. The server-side technologies are basically Java. You have the JSP servlet, ASP.NET, PHP, and of course, now we have the JavaScript also, like Node.js. So it's a new approach, which you have already done in semester 3. So therefore, these things are not absolutely new to you. And also you have done PHP in semester 3. Okay. Right. So when it comes to Java as a server-side component, so we call those technologies as JSP and servlet. And if you want to use JSP and servlet, you need to have Java web server. Okay. So either you can have a web server or you can have application server, because application servers always support web technologies and EJBs. Right. So that is why we prefer the JBoss Wildfly. Then we can use that server for both web development and enterprise Java. So if you use something like Tomcat, so then when we develop enterprise Java beans, you need to again go back to something like Wildfly. Okay. Right. If you have any question about what I'm talking right now, then and there ask and clarify. That is the easiest way. Okay. So Apache Tomcat is just a web server. But if you take something like Wildfly, JBoss, those are application servers that support both web, that contain both web content and application content. Right. So when it comes to Java server-side scripting, we have two technologies, Servlet and JSP, which are related. Actually, your JSP pages are pretty much like PHP pages, but only thing is at runtime, those JSP pages are converted to servlet. Or else you can straight away write servlet. So working with basically what we do is we heavily use JSPs and we use little bit of servlet. So it's basically mixture of servlet and JSP that does the work. And the advantage of using Java is in the server side, we have the fully fledged object-oriented support, right? Polymorphism, inheritance, and all those concepts, and also enterprise level concepts like enterprise Java beans and so on. So therefore, when it comes to server side, Java is stronger than PHP. For serious applications like banking applications and so on, where transactions security is super important, usually we don't go for PHP, we go for Java or ASP.NET. But ASP.NET, there's an issue that servers runs mainly in Windows, but Windows machines are not very powerful. So therefore, you can get the power of Unix machines with JSP and servlet. And of course, other technologies like enterprise Java Beans, Java Persistence API, and there are plenty of frameworks. For example, we have the Struts framework, Spring framework for Java side. Okay, right. So the easiest way to learn JSP and servlet is practically doing that. Okay, practically developing. Right. So let's first create a servlet. Right. So you can go through the note at any time. So when it comes to servlet, it's just a Java class mapped to a URL. So when someone type that URL and enter, basically your servlet class is called by the web server. That is the idea behind servlet. How do you make your class servlet? You need to extend your class by HTTP servlet class or generic servlet class. Then you can map it to a URL. Right? It's a very simple concept. So HTTP servlet is more specific to web development, HTTP or the World Wide Web, but generic servlet class is little bit more general version or abstract version of the HTTP servlet. But practically mostly we use HTTP servlet, we extend HTTP servlet because that is what we mostly do. Okay, right. So let's straight away do it. Okay, let's straight away do it a practical manner. So my assumption is you have the Eclipse environment set up with JBoss Wildfly server is also configured. Of course, if you haven't done it yet, today itself, after the class, go through that video I have shared to the WhatsApp group and do it by yourself. And maybe even today itself, if you get any issues, maybe by tomorrow morning, just give me a call. I can help you fix those issues. Okay. Right. So first of all, you need to create a web application. So in your Eclipse environment, Eclipse is just like IntelliJ. So you can go for File, New. So there are two ways you can develop web application. So enterprise level application. One is using IDE. Other thing is using manual approaches. But most of the time, working with IDE is faster. And of course, the manual approach and IDE or manual folder structure also you can integrate it to IDE. Okay, right. So therefore, so there are different type of projects available. So what we will be using is a new dynamic web project. Dynamic web project. Right. So there are some other projects like JPA project, enterprise application project, EJB project, and so on. The static web project. We will be creating a dynamic web project. Okay. So I just selected dynamic web project. You have to give it a name. Already I have a project called hello, so therefore I'll call this hi. Okay, so remember you must have the Wildfly server running, so you can see that it has Wildfly 10.x is my target runtime because I have already installed it. Right, so then don't change any of these things. Just say next. Don't do any changes to this. This is your context root. That is your URL will be something like HTTP localhost 8080/hi and slash your other pages. Okay, like Aurora CSLK/BIT and so on. So your hi is your web context, right? For this project, if you want, you can give it a different name. So you by default it takes the same name as your project name, right? So then you can just say finish. Okay, just take the generate web XML because I will explain what is web XML file is. It's a very important file in web applications. Okay, tick that and say finish. It will create the basic folder structure. Okay, right. So now I have project called hi. So the important folders are the web context folder, where we have our HTML, CSS, JavaScript, that is client side, as well as JSP code. And under web.inf, you have that web XML file. All your Java classes like servlets, you will be writing under Java resources, SRC. Okay, so Java resources SRC, where your servlets are. Your HTML, JSP files will be in the web content folder. The web XML file is in the web.inf. Currently, web XML file has just the welcome file list. So that is what is your default page. If someone doesn't type the page, just they type the web context on like HTTP localhost 8080 hi. So then if one of these files are there in your root folder that is under web context, that file will be given, right? So if you want, you can just delete it because we don't care about that. Okay, right. I just deleted that also. Right. So now I want to check whether my web application is running. So because this web application, you need to deploy to your application server. So what we do is, if you are doing this manually, you create a WAR file. It is something like a jar file, a web archive, and we can deploy the web archive to the web server or the application server. So in that recording I shared you in the afternoon, so it shows how to access your admin console. Of course, if you create your WAR file, you can go and deploy there also. But here, your Eclipse environment is capable of automatically deploying it to the application server. Right. So then what we need to do is, let's see whether our web application can be successfully deployed. So therefore, first, because I don't have any page, no HTML, no JSP, no servlet, nothing. Okay. So therefore, first I will create a small HTML file. Say, I right click in the web context and say new HTML file. So remember, you click on the correct folder, then the file will be created in the correct folder. Otherwise, you need to drag and drop. Right click on the web content, new HTML file. So I'll just call it maybe something like index or hello.html and say next. I don't need to change any of these. I'll say finish. So in the body, I will just type something like h2 or h1, hello web, Java web or something. Of course, this is just an HTML file. Save it, Control S. Make sure you always save your files. And now what you can do is, right? So I have already started my server. One approach is you can automatically deploy when you restart, or you can right click and say add and remove. So you can see that my previous project is already deployed, that is hello, which I just kept it because I just want to copy paste some code from that. So I just created the hi web module, web project. So that one is not yet deployed. So therefore I select it and say add. This is basically the asking the Eclipse environment to deploy my second web project called Hi. Basically, it will create the WAR file, packaging my files, and then put it into the web server. Remember, when we do the PHP, we go to that HTTP docs folder and we code there. But here we code somewhere else and deploy that to the web server. Okay. Right. So I just put it there and say finish. And you can see there are some messages saying your WAR file is deployed. You can see hi.war file has been deployed. Okay. And the web context is /hi. Right. So always when I deploy or not, I always restart, because sometimes even though you deploy, sometimes still there are caching issues and so on. So therefore, whenever I do something, I usually restart the server for safe side. Okay, restart the server. So it won't take much time, just few seconds. Okay. Right. So now you can take a browser and type the URL, or easier thing is just click on your file you want to test. In my case, hello HTML, right click and say run on server, or run on server. Right. So you select your server and say finish. Okay. So it will open a browser. In the Eclipse environment has a small simple browser, and you can see the URL and it says hello Java web. So that is exactly what I type here. Okay. What I type here, hello Java web. So that means my web application has been properly deployed. And if you want, you can copy this URL and type it in your browser also, because anyway, this is a web application. So what is the URL? Localhost :8080. For the Wildfly server, the default port is 8080. 8080. Then /hi, that is my project name. Right, that is my project name. Hi slash. So this is my file hello.html. Right, localhost :8080/hi/hello.html. So if you had another HTML here, so basically you just type / that page, but make sure you add it into the web content folder. Okay. Right. So that is how you create a dynamic web application. Still, this is not a dynamic web application because it has only a static hello HTML file. This is just HTML. Right. So now I want to explain you how to work with servlet. So remember, servlet is a Java class which extends a specific class in Java J2EE, either HTTP servlet class or generic servlet class, and override certain methods. And when you map it to a URL path, then someone type that URL path, that servlet is getting called. So that is the idea behind servlet. Okay. So in that servlet, you have the access to the request as well as response. So your request may have some parameters, if it is something like file submission or something, which you can access from your servlet. And also you can write to the response, whatever the results. Okay. So remember, it's something like in PHP, you have the $_get and $_post. So similarly, you have the parameter called request. So remember, we used to write, okay, in the PHP page. So similarly, you have the response object. So therefore, things are a little bit complicated in JSP servlet, not very straightforward. It's not as straightforward as PHP, but things are little bit more. You may feel like it is little bit more complex, but the reality is it is little bit more formal, right? Formal. So that things are very object oriented. Therefore, things get little bit complicated, but that complication is something you can manage. And it is really helpful complication, because things are very formal, means Things are very reliable, secure, and so on. So that is why for very serious applications, we go for JSP Servlet or Java Enterprise Edition, not PHP. PHP is good for learning things, do something quickly, simple things. But when it comes to complicated things, PHP is not good enough. So that is where things like JSP Servlet, Enterprise Java Beans are more practically usable. Okay, right. So now we want to, I told you the two main Java server-side technologies are Servlet and JSP. Let's first look at what is a servlet is. Okay. So first I will explain you how to create a HTTP servlet, which is the most widely used servlet. Okay. So now I follow my document also. There, of course, first we create a generic servlet, but here in this session, I will first create a HTTP servlet. Okay, HTTP servlet. So I have already created a web project, and I will call this servlet, okay, second servlet, and I will map it to the URL path called second. Okay, don't worry. Just look at what I'm doing. Say first I will create a package, or I can create the package while I'm creating the servlet also. So usually we write code in a package. I will call this package as say com.aurora cs. You can give any name. So then you can see there's a package created. Basically, it has created a subfolder and subfolder. And inside that package, I will create my first servlet, or I will call it second servlet, because the first servlet I will be creating later. Okay. So I will select, right click on my package, new servlet, and the project is hi. The class name I will call it. I will be using the same name as much as possible, and I will call it second servlet. Okay, second servlet or second HTTP servlet. Okay, right. Second HTTP servlet, because the first one will be generic servlet. I just gave it a name, and I will say next. And there, this is the URL mapping. I will map it to the path called second. Of course, you can map it to whatever you want, but I will map it to path called second. I will select this and say edit. By default, the class name and the path name will be the same, but I just want to make it simple. Second. Okay. You can see all simple. Then I will say next. And make sure I forget to mention, make sure here your superclass is HTTP servlet. That is by default your superclass. It is in the JavaX servlet HTTP package. Okay. Right. So then next, of course, I have changed this to second. The name is also there, second HTTP servlet. That is fine. Okay. So then we'll say next. Okay. So there are so many options. Just untick the constructor from superclass, and here just untick do post also. Just keep the do get. So these are different methods you can override. I just want to override do get in this case. Remember, just like your get and post, here you have the do get and do post methods. So when someone give a gets type of response submission, it's a do get is called. When someone post it, we discussed that under HTML also, form submission, get and post. So then the do post is called. So in this case, we are not doing form submission. So I just want to generate the do post method only. And I will say finish. I will delete these comments because you might feel like it's big thing. And also the serial version ID, we don't need. I will delete that also. But don't delete this annotation. and I will delete this part as well. You can see that I have created a class called second HTTP servlet, which extends HTTP servlet class, which is a built-in class in Java uh, servlet HTTP package. So then, so you can see it has written something to the output. Don't worry too much about that right now. Just to check whether this is getting called, I will just say serve that. Just to check whether our code is getting called. Just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then it appends something else also, just a path as well. Don't worry about that. Right? We will look at these methods in detail in a minute. Right. So now I will save it. Okay. Now basically what happens is the web path, that is HTTP 8080 localhost 8080 slash high slash second is mapped to this particular servlet. So that is what is meant by this annotation is saying. Okay, so if someone type that basically call this do get method. Okay, and in do get method we just print something and send it to the response. I will explain everything again. First, we want to do things and see what happens. So then to understand what is happening. Right, make sure you control S and save it. And now you can test this straight away, of course, by running this, or you can just restart the server. When you restart the server, usually it get deployed again, synchronized. Okay, restart the server. Remember this URL pattern is second, and see whether there are error messages here. And if there are error message, have a look at it and try to figure out what is it. Right. So now I will type slash second. Earlier, remember slash hello.html. Now this is localhost 8080 high slash my URL pattern for that particular servlet is second. So that is mapped to that particular servlet, and enter. And you can see that serves at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 high. Context root is high. That is exactly what I typed. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that means basically when you type this particular URL and enter, your web server has called this particular servlet. And it's do get method. If you did it something like a form submission with post, rather than do get method, it will call the do post method. Okay. And your do get method, now you can see that it is automatically getting called by the server, your Wildfly server. And that method has two parameters, one for the request, the other one for the response. So you must know these classes, right? One is HTTP. Now you must know first, you need to extend the HTTP servlet class. And the two parameters are HTTP servlet request object and HTTP servlet response object. So when you write something to the output, you use this response object. If you want to extract something from the request, you use this request. Here we don't extract anything, but we write something like a hello to the response. Okay. Right. Any questions? Right. So this is how we map URL to a servlet using annotations. So this annotation ampersand web servlet and parameter is your path. This is one way of mapping servlet to a URL. This is a newer approach. And there's another approach that is using web XML file you can map. Okay, you can map using web XML file. Now, if I comment this line, that is annotation, and restart the server. Remember, when you restart, the changes are again synchronized. Restart the server. I'm waiting for the restart to finish. Right, you can see Wildfly server started. Now, if I refresh this page, same URL, now it says not found. So the reason is I just commented this annotation that map that particular URL to this servlet. Okay. So therefore, this mapping is important. So this mapping is doing the in the background map that web path into the servlet. So I told you there are two ways you can do the mapping. The first approach is using the annotation. I just commented this annotation because I want to explain you the second approach. That is, you can do this mapping in web.xml file, right? Which is under web.inf folder. This is a standard folder structure for Java web applications. Okay. Right. So there you need to add some entries. Okay. So every servlet has a class, of course, that is, and you can give it a name also. So that means you can give your servlet class a name. Then that name can be mapped to a path. So thereby, so basically you indirectly map path to the class. How do you map it? You map path to a name and name to the servlet class. So thereby mapping path to the servlet. And of course, when you work with the web.xml file, you need to use the exact tags, which are not HTML tags, which are specific tags for the J2EE. Okay. So how do you map it? This is how you map it. I will copy paste this because otherwise it will take time. Right. It must be, okay, display name is also not required. It must be under web app tag. Right. So you have the servlet tag, then the servlet mapping. Okay. So servlet tag have servlet name, servlet class. Okay, servlet name, servlet class. In my case, my servlet class is com Aurora CS second HTTP servlet. Okay, second HTTP servlet. I just copy from somewhere else. So this is second HTTP servlet, and let's give it a name. I'll call it second servlet or something like that. Any name. Okay. Now I use the same name here. And so that means this second HTTP servlet has the name second servlet, and second servlet is mapped to, let's give the context path as second. Okay, so that is exactly what we did here also. So rather than now I have commented that, but I did the same thing using the web.xml file. So now the URL path second is mapped to a servlet name second servlet. And you can see that this servlet name second servlet is mapped to com Aurora CS second HTTP servlet. So therefore, if you just call it, the do-get method of this particular servlet will be called. Okay. And it will say, okay, I just add some more 6, 7, 8, 6, 7, 8, 9. Just to check whether my modifications are getting effective. I just save it. Now usually what I do is I restart rather than redeploy. If there are some changes, it will ask, yes, because I forgot to save the web.xml. And now it says you have unsaved things, which I said, yes, save it. Right, so again, the Wildfly server has started, no errors, okay. So now again, let's refresh and see, because earlier when I refresh, it says not found, but this time we have the web.xml file. I refresh, still it's nothing working. So why is that? Maybe something wrong. And no error also, right? No error also. Maybe I need to redeploy it. එහෙම වෙන්න පුළුවන්. දැන් මම restart කරාට හරි ගියේ නැහැ. තාම page එක පේන්නේ නැහැ. Maybe my mistake. Okay. Or maybe still this web.xml file has not been deployed properly. Okay. So I doubt that is the issue. Again, let me double check the web XML. Yes, I have saved it. Is it correct? Second servlet, com Aurora CS, second HTTP servlet. Yeah, it looks like my web XML mapping looks okay. Maybe I can again restart, or rather, I will just redeploy it. Right. I'll say add and remove. Maybe I'll remove this high. This is my project, right? High, and again add it. Okay. Or maybe just say finish and later again add it. Okay. So those are the things you must try out, because sometimes the servers have caching issues and so on. Then I'll again add and remove, because now I removed it. Now I hope now my web XML file is picked by this guy. Add all and finish. And let's see now whether we get it. Right. Somebody restart kalaban and then remove add kalaban. And now let's refresh it again. Now it says that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 high. So that means now mapping is still again working. But this time there is no annotation, because annotation is commented, but still it's working, because now this time it is using this mapping from the web XML. So therefore your servlet can be mapped to a URL or path either using the web XML file. You must know what are these mapping tags. Or easier thing is you just have the annotation. You don't need both. Of course, if you have both, still it work, but usually we don't go for the both. Right. So the easier thing is the annotation. So therefore, most of the time I will be using the annotation, because that is easy. But you must know that the second approach is also there using the web XML. Okay. Right. So any questions? So because we are just calling the URL, we just override the do get method. Otherwise, we need to override the do post. Right. So in do get method, this is just the generated code. I will write it a little bit more serious code now. Right. I will just copy paste this code, because otherwise it take time. I will comment this line. Okay. I'll copy paste and explain you the code. Right. So why there are errors? Because I need to import these classes. So print writer is something we have used in Java IO file handling also in semester 1. Just import Java IO print writer package class. This is because I just copied from the PowerPoint. So these double quotes are not proper double quotes. Right. So now you can see there are no errors. Of course, the web servlet, I don't need this package import. Right. So what I did was, remember we have the two parameters for the do get method, that is request parameter, response parameter. Of course, if you want, you can just call it X and Y. Okay. Right. So there, first thing what we do is we set the content type to HTML, because you can send different type of pages or contents to the browser. So browser like to know upfront what kind of a page you are sending. Is it a HTML page? Is it a image? Is it a MP3, MP4, and so on? So therefore, it's best practice to set the content type as text HTML to the response, because this is what we are sending to the browser from the server. So then you need to get a print write object from your response parameter, which is HTTP servlet response. You can't directly write to the response. From response, there's a method called get writer. From that, you can assign it to a variable, which is a print writer. So print writer is something like input output stream, or the output stream, where you can use the write method or println method to write anything. So usually we are supposed to send HTML page. So therefore you have the HTML tag, body tag. At the end, we close the body tag and HTML tag. And in between, we have just hello, let's say second HTTP servlet. So whatever you want according to the business logic. Okay. And here you can write whatever you want, a valid content for web page, tables, and anything, hyperlinks, anything. Any valid HTML text can be used. Make sure it's in println. Okay. Right. So I'll save it. So this is just to make it. So always you get the print write object and write to the print writer and close your print write. Right. So whatever you write here will be there. Okay. Right. So now I did some changes. So therefore I'll again restart the server. So if you do a change, either restart or undeploy and deploy, or maybe you do both if first one doesn't work. Okay. Right. So now I can refresh and see. Yes, hello second HTTP servlet. So I just did some changes to the response. Right. So there's another way to test your HTTP servlet. That is, of course, you know the mapping. Using the mapping, you just type the path, or you can just right click in the Eclipse environment, the servlet class. If you have done the proper mapping, only this will work. Right click and say again, run on server. Okay, so why is that? Selection did not contain any resource that can run on a server. Yeah, maybe I have to select here in the servlet class. I click on this one earlier, maybe the top class, run on server. Select the server and say next. Of course, if you have not deployed, you will deploy and finish. So that will load that page into your mini browser. Anyway, both are the same URL. Okay. So your Eclipse has a simple browser. So exactly same output. Okay. Right. So sometimes you can just run it from there, or if you know the mapping, you can just use your browser. Of course, the software developers mostly use the browser. Okay. Right. So that is a very simple servlet, HTTP servlet. So one approach is use HTTP servlet or extend HTTP servlet class, which is the normal approach and easy approach. And most of the time software developers, web developers use extend HTTP servlet. But when they develop this API, Java Enterprise Edition, so they had kept another class called generic servlet that is little bit more generic than HTTP servlet. Of course, which is very, very rarely we use, but they can ask that in the exam. Okay, because it's mentioned in your note. So that is called generic servlet class. So your first example is about, so this actually we have done the demo too, generic servlet. So only difference is when you create your class, extend from generic servlet class rather than HTTP servlet class, then it's a generic servlet. Okay, right. So let's do that example now. I will again right click on the package, say new servlet. Again, it's a servlet, and I will give the exact name as well. I'll call it first servlet because the second one, earlier one is second HTTP servlet. I'll call it say first. I'll call it first generic servlet. Okay, to make it a little bit more interesting. First generic servlet. I'll change the code also. First generic. And it is mapped to the path first. Okay, path first. But first, make sure your superclass is not HTTP servlet. You can say browse and search for generic servlet. Generic servlet. It's again in the Java servlet package. Right now it is extended from the generic servlet class. So then next, I want to change this path To make it simple, I'll just call it first because the other one we map it to second. Like first, then next. Right. So you can see this one, it doesn't have the do, get, do, post methods anymore because do, get, do, post methods are in the HTTP servlet. In generic servlet, what you have is the service method. Service method. Again, I don't need the constructor from superclass. Maybe inherit abstract methods, only the service method. Okay. And I will say finish. Okay. So now it has generated the first generic servlet class, which is mapped to the first path called first. මම tool එකෙත් පොඩ්ඩක් මේක වෙනස් කරා. The first generic servlet to the first. Okay. මම මෙතනත් වෙනස් කරනවා. මෙතන class එකේ නම first generic servlet. First servlet කියන නමට තමයි map කරලා තියෙන්නේ. First servlet එක map කරලා තියෙන්නේ first එකට. හරිද? හරි. First generic servlet. Web XML එක නෙමෙයි මම මේ පාර use කරන්නේ annotation. මොකද web XML ලියනවා නම් ඕම ලියන්නේ. Right. So now I will delete these unnecessary comments. I don't need the serial version ID. Now you can see that if you are extending the generic servlet, what you have is the service method, which has not the HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response. Rather, the parameters are servlet request and servlet response. That is why we say this is more general, right? This is more general servlet, not specific to HTTP protocol. And now you can write your code. If you want to write something to the response, again, you can take the response object and write your code. So I'll copy paste just to make it faster. Again, you can get the print writer, same as previous. So this is because of my tabs in my PowerPoint. Again, you need to import print writer. I will share the code with you after the class. Java IO print writer. And it just print hello generic servlet, which is mapped to the URL pattern first. Right? First. Then make a first generic servlet වෙන්න ඕන හැබැයි යා. First servlet කියලා දෙන්න මේක first generic servlet වෙන්න ඕන. හරි. ඔක්කොම steps ටික දිහා තියෙන්නේ. මම මේකත් පොඩ්ඩක් මෙතන වෙනස් කරලා දාන්න නැත්නම් මට ඔක අමතක වෙනවා. හරි. මම මේ servlet එක මකලා ආයෙ හදනවා. මොකද මට මට පුළුවන් code එකයි document එකයි දෙක synchronize වෙච්ච code එකයි document එකයි දෙන්න ඕන. So just to make your life easy, okay? මම ආයි මේක අලුතින් generate කරනවා. මොකද මම screenshot එකක් ගන්න ඕන. I will delete this and again create it. I'll say new servlet. First generic servlet com Aurora CS, but browse it's extend from generic from my icon because I just want to take this screenshot again. Okay. Right. First generic servlet, and it is extended from the generic servlet. Okay. Right. So then I map it to the path called first. Right. Then make a first generic servlet කියන එක මම path එක වෙනස් කරා මොකටද? First කියන එකට තමයි map කරේ. හරි. First. And nothing else. So therefore I take that screenshot also. Just to make it simple, okay? So then finish. Let me update my note. Right. So then I have already changed it to first generic servlet and the URL is first. Okay. First name, of course, you can give any name, but this is first generic servlet, URL is first. Okay. Context එක වෙනස් මොකද project එක නම වෙනස් නේ ඒකට command එක. Right. So now of course I need to copy paste my code again. මේ code එක ID යන්න ඕන. Because this is not needed. This is not needed. This is not needed. Right. Right. I need to import the print writer. Right. And that's it. Right. So now I can run this generic servlet as well. Make sure you save everything. I'm using the annotation, not the web mapping. I will restart. This time I have mapped it to the /first. And see whether there are errors. If you have made any mistakes, sometimes here also you get errors. Right. So it looks everything is okay. Now I go and not second, it is high first. And this is a generic servlet. First. And you can see hello generic servlet. So first is mapped to first generic servlet, and I got this output. Now this time the difference, now compare these two classes. This is a HTTP servlet class, which extend from HTTP servlet, and your do get method and do post methods are there. Here, of course, I deleted the do post. There the parameters are HTTP servlet and HTTP servlet response. But if you extend the generic servlet class, you have the service method and not the do get and do post. The parameters are servlet request and servlet response. Now this is not HTTP specific servlet. This one is HTTP specific servlet. So almost 100% of the time we will be using HTTP servlet and HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response. But you must know that there's a generic version also available. Okay, right. So there, of course, you have the do get, do post, do put, do delete, and so on. Okay, and here also, if you don't want the mapping like this, you can comment this annotation, do it as exercise. You comment this annotation and write web XML, just copy paste something like this, another entry, and map it to the URL path first. It definitely worked, right? So I just kept it as an exercise for you guys, right? Right. So any questions? Any questions? Because this is a touch subject term එක. ඇඟේ තියෙන ඕන subject එක. කටපාඩම් කරන්න බෑ. Right. So now you must know the difference between generic servlet and HTTP servlet. Okay. So in generic servlet, you have the service method, override the service method. In HTTP servlet, you can override do, get, do, post, and so on. Okay. Right. So far, we have been using this HTTP response or the normal response to write something to the output. But sometimes what we need is get something from the request. Okay, get something from the request. If you are using the HTTP servlet, the parameter is HTTP servlet request. Okay. So usually, how do you get something? Mostly it is your form submission, your form parameters, or anything that is added to the query string. Query string. Okay. So this is a very simple example. Let's assume we have form. Okay, we have form called greetings form. Okay, greetings form. When you submit this form, we will submit it to a URL path which is mapped to a servlet. And in that servlet, we want to extract your submitted value from the text box. I hope you got what I mean. Right. So therefore, let's first create a HTML page. This is just HTML page. You know where to create HTML pages. I do everything in one project so that it's easier. Right click on the web content and say new HTML file. Say greetings form. Finish. Okay. And I will copy paste this. This is just a form, nothing fancy. Just a form. Okay. HTML form. මේ කෝඩ් සමහරවට හරියට වදින්නේ නැහැ මම මේ PowerPoint එකෙන් copy කරන්න හදන උදේට මම දෙන්නේ කෙලිම text මේ pages ටික ඒකට වඩා ඒ ප්‍රශ්න වෙන්නේ නැහැ. කොහොමද codes ටික ආයි copy paste ගහනවා. Right, it looks okay. Maybe this one is not proper. Right. පාට formatting කරන්න ඕන නම් control A ගහලා source format කියලා option එකක් තියෙනවා. ඒකට එයා ලස්සනට format කරලා දෙනවා code එක. Right. So now this is just a form and method is get. Action is URL path third. මතකද first second මේක map කරලා තියෙන third key එක. ඔයාලට කැමති නම් දෙන්න හරි. මේ නිකන් අර examples period දුන්නා. And when you submit, it's a submit button. It will be submitted to the URL path /third as a get. And you are sending name as a parameter, text field. So now you need to have a servlet which is mapped to the path called third. දැන් ඔයාලට තේරෙනව වැඩි. හරි. Now I will create a new. දැන් ඔයාලට තනියෙන් කරන්න පුළුවන් මෙතන ඉඳලා. Say new servlet. Right. මම note එකේ තියෙන class name දෙන්නම් පුළුවන් තරම්. හරි. ඒකට කියලා තියෙන නම තමයි greetings කියලා. common name greetings කියලා. දැන් ඕන්න මට third servlet කියලා දුන්නා නම් වැඩි ලස්සන නැහැ බయ్యා. Third servlet එක මට ආයි screenshot ගන්න වෙනවා. හරි. I will call it, give the same name. The class name is greetings. And it's a HTTP servlet, right? And I will edit this path and map it to third. Third කියන path එකට තමයි map කරන්නේ. Third කියන path එකට. බලන්න ඒකෙත් map කරලා තියෙන third කියන path එකකටද කියලා. third කියන path එකට map කරලා තියෙන්නේ. It can be anything you want, okay? And say next. Constructor from superclass I don't need. I don't need do post. I just need do get. අපි do post එකත් ඕන කරමු. පස්සේ do post එකෙන් මම පෙන්නන්නම්. හරි. Right. I want to generate the overwritten version of do get and do post. And I will say finish. Right. So again, I will delete unnecessary comments. Right. So now it has generated both the method do post and do get. Okay. In the do post, it's basically calling the do get. So do get එකේ ලියන code එකම තමයි do post එකට ඇවිල්ලා call කරන්නේ. Right. So now what I want to do is I want to extract that value from the request, that the name value. Code එක copy paste කරන වෙලාව යන හන්දා I'll write it in the do get, because if it is do post, it call the do get anyway. Right, I will again import the print writer. එකම වැඩේ කරන්න ඉතින් දැන් හරි. මෙතන තියෙන imports ප්‍රශ්නයක්. Right. So what I have done, set the content type to text HTML from the response object response parameter. I get the writer, print writer. And now you can see that from the request parameter, so far we have not been using the request parameter of the do get method. So it has a method called get parameter. To that you have to give the name. So I have given it as name because here you can see my text field's name is name. Right? Name මෙතන x නම් අතනත් x. හරි මෙතනත් x. So නම දීලා තමයි parameter එක value එක ගන්නෙ. I took it to a variable called name, or let's call it x. And then we just write that back to the response. Response එකට ආයෙ ලියන. ඒ කියන්නේ ඔයා type කරපු නම ආයෙ ඔයාගේ පැත්තට එවනවා response එකේ. Just to එක round trip එකක් යන server එකට ගිහලා ආයෙ server එකෙන් නම එනවා. හරි. මෙතනින් ගන්න පුළුවන්ද කියලා සාමාන්‍ය කෙනෙක් ඕක database එකට ගහනවා වගේ මොනවා හරි හරි. Right. So we just take it from the request and write it to the response. Right. Print write එක තියෙන response again. Now you can test it. Right. So again we can restart the server. අපි annotation පාවිච්චි කරලා තියෙන web XML එකේ map කරේ නෑ. ඔයාලට කැමති නැහැ කළා බලන්න. Restart. දැන් අපි ගන්නවද? Greetings form HTML කියන එක තමයි ඉස්සෙල්ලා ගන්න ඕනේ. ඒක submit කරාම තමයි මේ servlet එකට එන්නේ. Right. Greetings form HTML. අපි කියලා ගෙඩි browser එකෙම ගහමු. මෙතන first ආරම්භන නෙමෙයි දැන් තියෙන්නේ මොකද්ද? web context එකේ greetings form.html. Okay, මම type කරද්දී නම් වරද්දලා ගහලා තියෙන්නේ. මෙයාගෙන් copy කරමු. Greetings 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 form. එන්න එකක් වෙදෙන්නේ නැහැ. Greetings form. Okay, right. Then hurry. So let's say name is Nalaka. And click on the greetings button. Of course, the button again number the greetings කියලා. වෙනවනේ greetings. Submit කරාම යන්නේ third කියන path එකට. third කියන path එක map කරලා තින්නේ greetings කියන HTTP servlet. එතෙන්දී අපි අර request එකෙන් ගන්නවා name parameter එක අරගෙන ආයි response එකට ගහලා එවනවා. ඒකද output එක දෙන්නේ. You can see greetings to Nalaka. දැන් අතන type කරපු value එක තමයි මේ එන්නේ. හැබැයි එන්නේ server එකට ගිහිල්ලා server එක හරහා round trip එකක් එන්නේ. Right, Kamal and so on. And so that's now we are working with both request parameter and response parameter. And of course, if it is you are using the post here, like for example, if you are using in your this form rather than get, if you are using post, ඒත් වැඩ කරන්න ඕන. දැන් ඇයි ඒ? So when it comes to the do post, the do post call the do get. එහෙම නැත්නම් මෙතන මේ වෙනුවට මෙතන කෝඩ් එක ලියන්න පුළුවන් මාට. අපි ඔන්න වෙනම කෝඩ් එක ලියමු. Both have the same parameters, okay? Right. මම මෙතනින් කියන greetings to this. අපි මෙතන ඉස්සරහින් දාන්න get කියලා. get එකකින් ආවේ කියලා පෙන්නන්න. මේක post එකකින් ආවේ. Now of course this one is using post right now, okay? Again I will save, restart. So now my form is submitted as a post rather than get. So therefore I should get this post greetings to the name. Right, so I need to get back. Back කළාමදී refresh කරන්න ඕන. let's say Rehana. Post greetings to Rehana. So now this time the post method is do post is called. So this is super easy. The initial learning curve is the initially පොඩ්ඩක් set up කරගන්න පොඩ්ඩක් වෙලා යනවා ඊට පස්සේ මේ මහා දේවල් නෙමෙයි හරි මේ Java developers ට මේ magic කරන්නේ සාමාන්‍යයෙන් Java developers ට වැඩි පඩි හම්බෙන්නේ Java Python PHP අයට වඩා මොකද සමහරවිට මේ environment set up කරගන්නවා පොඩි දේවල් ටික කරගන්න බයයි කකුල් වේවුලනවා අතපය වේවුලනවා server එක set up කරගන්න ගියාම හරි error message එකක් ආවම හොයාගන්න බෑ ඕක තමයි IQ එක කියන්නේ පොඩ IQ එක කියන්නේ IQ එක තියෙන එක නම් බය නැහැ. error message එකක් ආවම පොඩ්ඩක් හොයලා බලනවා. අන්තිමට ගේම ගහන්නේ ඔන්න ඕවයි. තියරි කටපාඩම් කරලා නෙමෙයි. නෑ ඉතින් ඔය IT ඩිග්‍රී ගන්න කම්පියුටර් සයන්ස් ඩිග්‍රී ගන්න හැමෝටම ජොබ් තියෙන්න බෑ. ජොබ් නැතුව කොච්චර ඉන්නවද? කාලකන්ණි වෙවි. හරි. පාඩම් කරලා විභාග පාස් වෙනවා හැමෝටම වැඩක් කරගන්න බෑ. error එකක් ආවම චූ යනවා. හරි සුළුදිය පහ වෙනවා. පණ බය. කෙනෙක්ගේ උදව්වක් ගන්න තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ. ටීම් එකක් විතර වැඩ කරන්න තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ. කමියුනිකේෂන් ස්කිල්ස් නැහැ. එතකොට ඉතින් උපාධිය අරගෙන තියලා වාඩි වෙන්න තමයි වෙන්නේ. Okay. Right. So we'll take a break. After the break, we'll look at few more things like how to do form handling. Of course, that form handling අපි කරා. Session handling and also cookies handling and how to connect to the database using JDBC. එතකොට මේ topic එක ඉවරයි. It was servlet චුට්ටක් JSP චුට්ටක් තියෙනවා. Right. අද මේක ඉවර කරනවා කොහොම හරි 10 නෙමෙයි 10 මාන්නකම් හරි කරලා ඉවර කරනවා. Right, so now it's 8:10. We will be starting at just 10-minute break. Okay, let's take 15-minute break. 8:25. Okay, so let's continue. So now we have working with both request and response. So HTTP request and HTTP response. So from HTTP request, you can get parameters. And of course, you can write to the response. Okay. Right. So another concept is, which is again mentioned in your note as well, that is you can forward to another page. So that is from one HTTP request, maybe you can do a little bit of processing. And maybe depending on some of the results, maybe you do the further processing to another servlet. Okay, so that is possible. So you have two options, either forward or include. So the similar concept is there in PHP also. Okay, so in forward, you send forward the request to another resource. So then it take the control. That servlet take the control. But when you include, it is different. You just include a particular content. Still, your servlet is in control. Okay, so that is different. Okay. So this is an example to demonstrate both forward and include. Okay, forward and include. So this is basically you forward from servlet 1, it is forward to the servlet 2, and then servlet 2 send the response. Servlet 2 send the response, maybe conditionally. So once it is forward to another servlet, now first servlet has no control over the response, so second servlet must send the response. That is what happens in forward. But if it is include, say your servlet 1 includes servlet 2, so that means servlet 2 does something and again give the control back to the servlet 1. And therefore servlet 1 send the response. The original response is sent by the servlet 1. So servlet 2 does something, but it must give back the control to the servlet 1. So that is the difference between include and forward. Right? So you must know these concepts thoroughly in order to answer questions. Okay. Right. So this demonstration or this example is to explain the forward and Basically, this one is to explain the forward. Okay, forward. Right. So we can do it very quickly. So I have the code with me so that because otherwise what happens is when I copy paste this, I have to do a lot of tab characters and so on. I need to get rid of. Okay, so I will explain the code. Then I will copy from my other project. Okay, so this is a login form. Okay, login form. You log in with your username and password. Okay. So that is straightforward thing, right? So therefore, I can just copy paste it from my other page, other project, because that is self-explanatory. Right. Login form. I'll copy it and paste it to my second project. Right. Login form. Okay, just form. And we send the response submit as a get to a action called log, URL path called log. Okay, right. So that you can understand. So then we have created a HTTP servlet which map to the log path and we call it login, or the class name is login action. Okay, login action. I will copy paste the code and explain what it does because it's a little bit lengthy code. But your task is identify, understand the concept. Okay, so let me copy paste the login form as well. Sorry, login action from my previous project. And login action. I will paste it to my Java resources. Right, so you can see that login action is an HTTP servlet, which is mapped to the log path called log. Let me close all the others. Right, so I will just have the login form, which is submitted to the path called log. The path called log is mapped to the HTTP servlet called login action, and its do get method is there because here we are submitting as a get. And there what we do, we take the name and password from the request to know how to do that, get parameter method. And if both username and password are Aurora, in this example, we forward it to another servlet. We forward. Else, that is, if both username and password are not Aurora, we take the response and include to the same login HTML form. Include, right? Include. So that means we give this output and then we include the login form. That is the same form. So here we include, right? Here we forward. So this example demonstrates both. But when we forward it to a path, URL path called fourth. So therefore, we must have another servlet which is mapped to the path called fourth, because we are forwarding it to the URL path called fourth. For this one, of course, you don't need anything because you are again calling the login form with error message, right? Sorry, username and password error, and we are again giving the same form. So that is what is meant by include. Okay, include. Right. So now we need to have another servlet which is mapped to the path called fourth. Okay, fourth. So we call it forward action class, which is mapped to the fourth. Okay. So let's call it, let me copy that also. Right, forward action. So all we use is annotation, therefore we don't need to change web XML. Again, I will paste it there. Right. So what we do in the forward action, which is mapped to the URL path fourth. Again, we have over in the doGet method. We take the print writer and we print the name that we got. So remember, still that request has the name parameter because the same request is available when you forward. And we just say greetings and blah, blah, blah. And of course, we have a hyperlink as well. Hyperlink to another path called fifth. Right? To that, we want to redirect. Of course, redirection is not something we want to go into details, but you can see that when you click, it is going to this another path, another URL called fifth. So then, of course, you need to have the fifth also. Okay. Fifth must also be a servlet there. Okay. Or you can just say this is the end of the stuff. Okay. මොකද මෙතන තමයි අපි redirection එකක් කරලා තියෙන්නේ. ඔබට එතකොට ආට ඔක්කොම ටික ආව වෙනවා. Redirection එක include එක forward එක. හරි. So therefore now we need the redirect action. මොකද ඔක්කොම කාව වෙන තමයි example එක කරලා තියෙන්නේ. Redirect action. Right. So redirect action is mapped to the URL pattern called fifth. Okay. And there what we do is it redirect to the Aurora CSLK website. Okay, fine. Now let's restart our server because we have copy all the code. Restart. Remember the starting point is login form. So this is the biggest example because it has forward, include, redirect, all three concepts. Right. Remember the form is login form. I'll type it as hi/login form. Login form is just HTML. And you can see correct username is username and password is Aurora. Only it is forwarded. Otherwise, it is same page, right? I will just type Aurora and 123, which is not a correct password. So therefore, so this time what happens is it goes to the if part. Login form, right? Because it is Aurora means here. It goes to the else part. So therefore it gives this error message and again it has included the previous HTML file. Okay, so let's see. Right, you can see it has given me this error message and it has included this previous HTML again. But if you type Aurora, right, Aurora, so that goes to the if part, both Aurora. So then it is forwarding it to the fourth URL pattern, and fourth URL pattern is basically forward action, which gives you greetings and your name, and it has another hyperlink to demonstrate the redirection. Okay, right. So now let's log in. Right, you can say greetings to Aurora because I typed Aurora. And from this point onward, it is to demonstrate another concept called redirection. Right, redirection rather than hyperlink. So now when you click on this, okay, now when you click on this, you are going to the servlet called fifth. It is not directly hyperlinked to the Aurora CS website. It is this hyperlink is taking you to the servlet called fifth. And fifth is mapped to redirect action servlet. And there it send redirect to a different website. So you can, if you want to send to another website, you can use send redirect method of the response. So rather than you are giving the your response, you are redirecting it to another web page. So all these concepts are used in software development, web development. Sometimes we include, sometimes we forward, sometimes we redirect to another page. Redirect to another page means you are not sending anything from your side. You are not giving any request values or the response values or whatever. You are purely redirecting to another page, independent page. So therefore, this is a little bit big example because this, because now when you click, it will load the Aurora website, but not directly linked to the Aurora website. It goes to the fourth servlet map to the fourth URL, and then it redirect to the this particular website. Okay, so again, when you have time, again go through the code and understand what is redirect is doing, what is forward is doing, what is include is doing. Then go through the UCSC note, right? So it's very important that you pass this subject in the very first attempt. So if you fail subject like enterprise application development, it's a headache. So that means either you don't like the technical things, right? So usually if it is a theory subject, you can pass it in the second attempt. But when you fail, if you fail a technical subject, it's a vicious cycle, right? So that frustrates you. Of course, it is your problem. That is, you don't properly study it. Okay, so practical subject, technical subject, you need to study in practical manner. Okay, right. So any questions? Of course, at the very first time, you may not understand this, but you have already done PHP. So there also we learn about forward. මතකනේ අපි submit කරාම insert එකක් කරාට පස්සේ ආයෙ අර list එකට forward කරේ semester 3 වල. ඒක කන්ද මේක අලුත් දෙයක්වත් නෙමෙයි ඉතින් හරි. හැබැයි අර කරන වැඩ ටිකක් අර PHP වලදී කරනවට වඩා ටිකක් අමාරුයි වගේ හිතෙනවා. මොකද මේක object oriented විදියට කරන්න ඕන. හැබැයි මේක හරි formal. හරි. It has both process and cons. Process තමයි මේක හරි. Formal, secure, අවාසිය තමයි මේක කරන්න පුළුවන් කට්ටිය අඩුයි ඉතින්. හරි. PHP developers ලා ටක් ගාලා හොයාගන්න පුළුවන් වුණාට Java developers ලා හොයාගන්න අමාරුයි. ඒකත් ඉන්න ටිකට වැඩියෙන් පඩි ගවන්න. හරි. මේ complexity එක handle කරන්න පුළුවන් කට්ටියට. Okay. Right, so we already use servlet annotations. හරි. ඔය අමතරව පොඩි කතන්දර ටිකක් මම මුලදී skip කරන් ආවා. ඒ තමයි servlet එක වාට parameters දෙන්න පුළුවන්, servlet එක start up කරන time එක decide කරන්න පුළුවන් වගේ දේවල් තියෙනවා. ඒවා note එකේ explain කරලා තියෙනවා. UCSC note එකේ තියෙනවා. හරි. හැමදේම කියලා දෙන්න බෑනේ මේ පැය දෙකක පැයක දෙකක lecture එක. කොහොමද university level වල එහෙම කියලා දෙන්නේ නැහනේ. So I can give you the startup. Right? You must start learning. This is not grade 5 Sishata class. So when you go to the final year project, of course you have to start the final year project right from next semester. සමහරු එහෙම මානසිකව final year project එකක් කරන්න තරම් මානසිකත්වයක් නැහැ. සිගිරි මානසිකත්වයේදී මේවා කරන කට්ටියට මේ project එක කරන්න අවශ්‍ය පෞරුෂය හැදිලා තියෙන්නේ. මේ subject practically කරන කට්ටිය semester 3 4 වල. සමහරව semester 5 වලට උඩින් පාත් වෙන සුරංගනාවියෝ වගේ. හරි. එරේ message එකක් කියව ගන්න තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ. චුට්ටක් එරේ එකක් ආපු ගමන් මානසිකව වැටෙනවා. එහෙනම් මොකටද technology subject කරන්නේ? engineering කරන්නේ. දැන් ડોක්ටර් කෙනෙක් වෙලා හරියන්නේ නැහැ නේ accident service එකට දැම්මම දොස්තරට කලන්තයක් දෙනවා නම් ලෙඩට කලින්. එහෙම තමයි ඉතින් accident service එකේ ඉන්නකොට බෝම්බ වෙච්ච අවුවෙච්ච ලෙඩ්ඩු වෙනවා. ගහෙන් වැටිච්ච මිනිස්සු වෙනවා. වාහන වලට හැප්පිච්ච අය වෙනවා. heart attack ඇදලා පණ බාගෙට ගියා එනවා. ඉතින් ඒකට බය වෙන මොන මගුලද දොස්තර කෙනෙක් උනේ. බය නැහැ. බය නැත්තම් තමයි වෙන්නේ. බය නම් වෙන මගුලක් කරගන්න නේ. මේ කරන්න බැරි මගුල් වලට එන්න. හිතහයිය තියෙනවා. එර එකක් ආවම කියව ගන්න. ඊට වැඩිය භයානකයි නේද? අර දොස්තරට තියෙන දෙලි. හරි මැරිච්ච ලෙඩු තියෙනවා. මහරය 12ට එකට. මට බයයි කියන්න බෑ දොස්තර කෙනෙක්ට. එතකොට ආයෙ මොන මගුලටද මෙඩිකල් කොලෙජ් ගිහලා දොස්තර උපාධියක් ගත්තේ කියලා. Right. So we did this example as well. Annotations we have been already using, right? Mapping path to the servlet. Okay. But so these are some general annotations we have learned it in semester 1 itself. Okay. Deprecated, override, suppress warnings, but those are not J2EE annotations. And these are some servlet annotations. Like we have been already using web servlet. So there are some other annotations which are more advanced concepts, right? But we have been using this type of annotation. This is mapping a URL path to a servlet. This is again mapping URL path to a servlet, but with a name also. නමකුත් දීලා තියෙනවා servlet එක. ඒක ඉතින් අත්‍යවශ්‍ය නැහැ. Right. Our next concept is session handling. Okay. අපි session handling, cookies handling දෙක මම ඔයගලන්ට තියෙනවා ඉතුරු කරනවා. තනියෙන් note එක බලලා කරගන්න. හරි. Session handling we did for the PHP also. You know what is a session is. So when you go from one page to the other page, if you have created a session, you can keep some data in the session. Like that is how your application knows that you have already logged in and so on. Okay. II login password එක ගන්න නැහැ. And you can use those values in the session in some other pages. Okay. That is how you keep track of a shopping cart and so on. මට වෙලා තුනත් ආයේ session handling example එක කරනවා. හැබැයි ඊට වැඩි අපිට වැදගත් topic එකක් තියෙනවා. Session and cookies, because we have done it for the PHP in semester 3. Now you must be able to do it using the JSP servlet, of course servlet. Right? You know the concept behind session and the concept behind idea behind cookies. Okay. Right. අපිට වෙලා තුනක් අපි ආයෙ එකට එනවා. But first, I want to do database handling. අපිට වෙලාම තියෙනවා database handling කරන්න. මොකද database handling කරන්න නැති project එකක් නැහැ. Then when you go to the final year also. So can you say that I don't know how to handle database? The database handle the software developer. Right? Right. Database handling using JDBC. So there are two ways J2EE applications communicate with databases. One approach is using JDBC, which is very rare. Okay, very rare, but that is the easy approach. That is what we learn here. The second approach is using Java Persistence API. So that is mapping tables to classes. Okay, and also we can use data sources, which is more sophisticated approach where you don't write SQL much. You map classes to tables and let your data synchronize with the table. Right. But in this example, we look at how your web application communicate with the database using the JDBC. So remember in semester 1, we did an example how to connect your Swing application or your command line application to database using JDBC. Same concept, very easy, that your JSP or servlet can communicate with the database using JDBC. And remember, we are using a very specific Wildfly version, which is supporting JDK 1.8. And what we are using is little bit older version. So therefore, make sure you use little bit older MySQL. ඔයා මම කියන විදිහට environment එක set up කරනවා නම් මම කියන MySQL version එකම ගන්න. නැත්නම් ඔයාලට errors එයි. මොකද JDBC Java file එක compatible නැති වෙනවා. හරි. Right. So how to set up the environment? First, you need to have MySQL because this is little bit older Eclipse version and little bit older Wildfly server. So let's get back to our note on config environmental setup. අපි එතන database setup එක තාම කරේ නැහැ. දැන් තමයි කරන්නේ. But make sure you do exactly the way it's mentioned. Or else if you are using some other environment, whatever the instruction, follow it to the point. Okay. Right. So you must have the MySQL, not the MariaDB, because this is a little bit older version. MariaDB will give you some conflicting situations. Okay. So you need to have the MySQL. If you already have the SAM server with latest MariaDB and so on, don't worry. You don't have to uninstall it, but don't start your SAMP or WAMP version of the MySQL. Rather, download and install MySQL separately. And again, it is not going to conflict with your existing MySQL or MariaDB. You can have multiple versions of MySQL as long as you don't start it. Okay. So therefore, what I want you to download and install is MySQL version 8, which is compatible with our technology stack, our Eclipse and our Wildfly server, 10-point server. Okay. So go to the MySQL website and download MySQL community server 8.x or any version which is related to 8. Okay. So this is 8. Okay. 8.x. Just download and install. I think 8.x is the latest. Yeah, so that's basically pretty much the latest, but make sure you download MySQL, not MariaDB. If you have SAM server, that is not MySQL, that is MariaDB. It's maybe you will be able to configure it, but I tried to configure with MariaDB, but I got some errors with the JDBC driver. Okay, so just download the latest one. It should work, right? 8.30, because any version which is related to 8. Okay. Any version related to 8. Just download and install it. When you install MySQL, just remember your root username and password. Okay. So in my example, I have already installed with username and password both as root. But most of the time the password is blank, but just note it down. Okay. And then I have installed MySQL as a service. So therefore I need to start my service. Okay. I think I have already started it. Services. MySQL 80. It's running. So at any time I can stop it, because I have made it manual. Manual means it is not auto started when I start my computer. I have set it to you can go to the properties, not properties. You can say where can I change to manual? Yeah, you can see startup type is manual. So that means it is not auto started. At any time I need to come and start it, I need to come and stop it. Okay, otherwise my other MySQL versions will conflicting with this. Right. So therefore, at any time I can stop it. Okay, stop it. And at any time I can start it. Right. Now my MySQL is stopped. And now I start it. But make sure you have start your MySQL. Install and start your MySQL. Okay, and make sure that you don't run any of your SAMP or WAMP or any version where you have the MySQL. Okay, you can install it, but don't start because you want to start your MySQL from here. Or if you have the MySQL in your whatever the other server, it should work. Only thing is maybe the MariaDB has given me some issues. Even when I download the jar file from the MariaDB site, still it didn't work. Okay, right. So now I have start my MySQL. So then you can connect to the MySQL using command line, or usually when you install MySQL Community Edition, you get the MySQL Workbench also. Right? MySQL Workbench, you can connect using the MySQL Workbench as well. Whatever the way, I don't mind. Okay, I don't mind. How do you connect to the database? Because just you need to create a database and table. Right, so I started my MySQL. Then I will say connect. Database, connect to database. In my case, my username is root and my password is also root. Usually you don't need to change these things. Say okay. Now you can see the databases. I have already created a database called SEM4DB and SEM4DB1. Database right. And I have created a table called account. Table එක හදන්න ඕන මෙතන right click කරලා create table කියලා හදාගන්න. Table called account. And I have added some data also. Okay, so my database is SEM4DB1 and a table called account with ID, name, and balance. Data table දාලා තියෙන්නේ මම. Right. So we will be using this particular table and database. ඔයාට ඕන නමක් දෙන්න. ඒ නම ඔයා හරියට පාවිච්චි කරන්න ඕන ඔය කෝඩ් එක ඇතුලේ හැබැයි. Database එකේ නමයි table එකේ නමයි. Okay. Right. So now my MySQL is running and I have a database called SEM4DB1 and it has a table called account. But make basic idea එකක් තුනම ඇතියා. මොකද ඔයාලට ඊළඟට තව topic එකක් තුන Java persistence API කියලා. Right. So now what I want to do is create a project in my web project. I don't want to create another project. ඔයාලට කැමති නම් තව වෙන dynamic web project එක හදාගන්න. But in my same project called Hi, I want to create a servlet which communicate with the database using JDBC. Right, JDBC. So when you do that, make sure you download the correct JDBC driver for the MySQL. So all the details are given here. Go to this website, download MySQL site, J connector, and make sure you download the version 5.1.49. මොකද ඕක වැඩ කරා. හරි වෙන version උත් වැඩ කරයි. නමුත් ඔයාලට ප්‍රශ්න අඩුවෙන් කරගන්න ඕන ඔය කියන version එක දාන්න. ඒකට බොහෝ විට ඔයාලට errors එන එකක් නැහැ. right. පොඩක් පරණ version නෑ. මොකද ඕක තමයි අර JDK 8 වලට හරියට support කරන්නේ. right 5.1. ගන්න කියලා තියෙන මොකද්ද අර 1.49. එකම ගන්න නැත්නම් 5.1 ඕන එකක් හරියයි. Microsoft Windows OS version all නැත්නම් 64-bit කියලා ගන්න. And you can download the zip archive. Jar file එක දෙන්නම් ඔයාලට class එකේ වුණාට පස්සේ WhatsApp group එකට දාන්න. එතකොට ඒක ඉතින් ගත්තත් හරියයි. Download it. Right? Download it's a zip file. Then unzip it. Download කරලා unzip කරන්න ඕන. I'll give you the jar file. Don't worry. Because I downloaded it previously. MySQL connect Java 5.1.49 කියන එක තමයි මේ unzip කරාම එන්නේ. ඔක ඇතුලේ තියෙන මෙන්න මේ bin jar එක තමයි මොන වෙන්නේ. So this is jar file you need to give, right? මම මේ jar file එකම දෙන්න නැත්නම් උඩ තියෙන zip file එකම දාන්න. ඒක ඇතුලේ තියෙන jar එක තමයි දෙන්න ඕනේ. මේ bin කියලා තියෙන එක තමයි දෙන්න ඕනේ. හරි? මේ bin කියලා තියෙන jar එකම දෙන්න නැත්නම් ඔයගොල්ලෝ පටලවා ගන්න. It's a jar file. So this is jar file containing the connector, JDBC connector for MySQL, compatible to the our environment because it must compatible with our MySQL as well as our server. Okay. ඒවා තමයි ගොඩක්කට අපිට පැටලෙන තැන. හරියට search කරලා බලනකොට මෙයාට හරියන J connect එක මොකක්ද කියලා. Right. So now and also copy that to your project. Okay. Say copy to your project, and your project has a under web by NF, there's a folder called library folder. So you need to paste your JDBC connector file to that lib folder. So when your jar files are in the lib folder, automatically those are detected by your var file. You can see මම දාපුවා මෙයා මේ මෙතන detect කරගත්තා jar file එක. ඉතින් JDBC කියලා. If it is not compatible, you might get error message as well. Right? So that means when you add a jar file to your lib folder, the classes inside that jar file is available for your classes. So that is the idea, right? So that is a standard folder. You don't have to configure anything. If it is in the lib folder, any class in that jar file is available to you. Okay, so that is the idea. So available to these classes. Right, so now you have your MySQL up and running, and you have created a database and a table, and you have downloaded the JDBC driver, relevant driver, and put it into the lib folder. So that when you deploy it in the web server or the application server, this JDBC file is also deployed as part of your web archive file. ඒ var එක ඇතුලේ මේ jar file එක තියෙනවා. Right? Nice. So now the configuration stuff are done. Now let's see whether we can run the program. Write the code and run our program. Okay. So we have created the table. We have, of course, we are not creating another project. We are going to use the same project called Hi. මොකද ඔක්කොම ටික එක project එකකට ගත්තම ලේසි නැත්නම් ගොඩක් project හැදෙනවානේ අපිට. And we have copy that MySQL Java connector J connector file to the web by NF lib folder. Right. So that is also we have done. You can see අපේ තියෙන වෙන version එකක්, but that is okay. මගේ තියෙන 5149 බලන්න ඒක මොනේද කියලා අනිත් project එකේ. 5149 it worked. Okay. මෙතන තියෙන වෙන version එකක් කියලා Java 8 කියලා. නමුත් ඒ මම rename කරලා ඇත්තේ ඒ වෙලාවේ. හරි. Right. So now we are done. So let's write the code. So this is a utility class to connect to the database. Connection object එකක් අරන් දෙන්න තමයි මේක තියෙන්නේ. මතකද අපි ඔය වගේ මතක් කරා semester 1 වල. Okay. මම code එක ඉස්සෙල්ලා ඔයාලට copy paste කරලා පස්සේ explain කරනවා. හරි. So this is the connection. This is not a servlet. This is normal Java class, which has a static method called connection, initialize database, which we have your database name, server name, username, password, and get a connection, right? So let me copy that code from my other project because I have already coded this. Database connection.java, which I will paste here. So this is my database name, semester 4 DB1. In my case, my username, both password, both are root. ගොඩක් අඩ install කරද්දී root නෙමෙයි by default මේක blank දෙන්නේ මොනවද මේක blank තියන්න. double quote එකක් කරලා double quote එකක් පහළ. And by default the port is 3306 and double check whether your installation is using 3306 or anything else. And this is com mysql jdbc driver class. Okay. That is included in your that jar file, right, that we downloaded from the MySQL site. And driver manager has a method called get connection. To that you need to send the db URL, db username and db password, and it will give you the connection. Okay. Then make out a web window and you can Java class එක විදිහට run කරන්න පුළුවන්. Test class earlier. Right. So that is our utility class. Then we have the insert form. When you submit that, we are going to do the insert to the database using JDBC. So this is my insert HTML. එක ලේසියෙන් තමයි ඉස්සෙල්ලා ඒක පෙන්නලා ඉන්න. Again, I have the code in the other project. So therefore, I'll just copy paste from that project. It's a web page, HTML page. Insert HTML. I'll copy to the web content. Right. So that is a super simple form. Of course, insert account. Insert account. So it's a form where you take the ID, name, and balance, text fields. And when you submit, it is submitted to URL pattern called insert as a post. එන අපි දැන් insert කියන එක type එකට map වෙච්ච servlet එක ලියනවා. post එකේ do post එක override කරනවා. දැන් තේරෙනවද වැඩි හරි? So that is what my insert class is doing. Class එකක් දිහා තියෙන insert කියලා. And you can see it is mapped to the insert URL pattern. Right. So I already have that class written in my other project. So therefore I'll just copy paste. Otherwise it will take time. Insert Java. Cancel. මම වැරදි එකක් copy කරලා තියෙන්නේ. Insert Java. Save before the operation. All right. So that means it asked me to save the HTML file. That is fine. Right. So now I have the insert Java. And what it does is, remember we have the database connectivity utility class. And it has a method called initialize database. We call that method static method from the class name, which gives you a connection object. And this is pure JDBC, right? Pure JDBC. So remember, from the request is now available. From the request, we get those parameters, ID, name, and balance. From the form submission, this is the do post method. So then we execute, call the execute update method. And execute. Remember, both execute and update, we have the one method in JDBC. And you have the insert into account values. So these three parameters, we have set the parameters, right? The first parameter, second parameter, third parameter. First parameter is the ID. Second parameter is the name we get from the request. Third parameter is the balance. So then we execute it and close the connection. If there's an exception, it goes to the catch block. So then we know that there's something wrong with our insert. Okay. So that's it. ඊට පස්සේ list account වලට පොඩි hyperlink එකක් දාලා දුන්නා. එතනින් ගිහලා ඊළඟ functionality එකට යන්න. Now we can test whether insert is working. Okay, insert is working. Right. So I hope I have saved everything. So therefore I'm going to restart the server because we did some changes. And we need to go to the insert HTML file. And when you submit, it goes to the insert HTTP servlet. There you get the JDBC connection and do the insert to the database. Okay. Right. So let's see whether it's working. So this is hi / insert.html. Why is that? Insert 8080 hi. Is it different name? In insert.html. Yeah, maybe my HTML is not, because I think HTMLs are not by default synchronizing. I may have to do the add and remove again. Maybe I will again remove it. And again, I will add it. Sometimes those HTML files are not added directly. Add, remove, add. Okay. And maybe again restart for the safe side. අර page එක නැත්නම් ගොඩක් අර restart කරන එක හරි add remove කරාම හරියනවා හරි. Auto sync වෙන්නේ නැහැ සමහරවිට. Right. So let's see whether now it's working. Hi insert.html. Still issue. Localhost 8080/hi/insert.html. What is the issue? insert.html. Correct, right? Hi insert. Okay, let's run it from here. Right click and say run as, run on server. Just to double check what is the issue. Right, so there I got it. Maybe I have typing mistake in my browser.
So hi, it should be capital.
Hi, it should be capital. Ah, yes, that is the issue. Yes. Yeah. Because it should be capital. Correct. Thank you. Yes, H is now I make it capital. Yes, now I got it. Okay. So now this is my form. I don't know how this hyperlink came. So you are not supposed to have this hyperlink anyway. This must be list account. Okay. I have made a small mistake. So this must be list account. List account. Okay. Anyway, that is not relevant to this one. Now let's see whether, let me check what are my existing IDs, because it will be the primary key for this table, so that I want to insert something which is not already there. Right. So I have so far 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So let's say 9. Say Nimal is, say Kevin, and balance is 10,000, or let's say 9,999. Okay. 9 Kevin, 9,999. Submit. And it says successfully inserted and list accounts. And let's refresh and see whether the new record is there. I can refresh this. How do you refresh? Yeah, this one. Now we can see there's a 9th one, Kevin, 9,999. So new record is inserted. So basically what happened? So when I submit, it is submitted to the URL pattern insert, and URL pattern insert is mapped to HTTP servlet call insert. So therefore its do post is called, because here I'm using the method post. Okay. And there, from the request, we get ID, name, and balance because those are submitted fields. Then we create an insert statement with parameters 1, 2, 3, question mark. So that is your first parameter, second parameter, third parameter, and we have set those parameters as 1, 2, 3. Then call the execute update, which is your JDBC. You learn from semester 1. Then close the connection. In case there's an error, it will go to the catch. Of course, in our case, we didn't get into the catch. So then we have hyperlink to say list account. Okay, simple as that. Of course, still we have not implemented this functionality because it goes to the list. URL pattern is not mapped to a servlet yet. It says not found. Okay, right. So now our next thing is we want to list the accounts. List the accounts. For that, we have already added a hyperlink to /list, but we need to have a servlet which is mapped to the /list. Okay, /list. So that is our next servlet that is called list, which is mapped to the list. Okay, so I'll copy paste that code also from my other project so that I don't need to type it, because if I type it, it will take another 20 minutes. Right. So next one is list Java. මේ code කටපාඩම් කරන්න නෙමෙයි තියෙන්නේ. Just get a feeling of it. දැන් මම අපි උනත් මේ code copy paste කරන්නේ. හරි ඔය clearly කටපාඩම් කරන්නේ නැහැ. But you must overall you must know what is happening. You must be comfortable, confident working. Okay. Right. So this is my list Java, which is a servlet, another HTTP servlet, which is mapped to the list. But ඒකට අපි hyperlink කරලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒක අපි link එකක් දාලා තියෙනවා අපිට do get එක තමයි ඕන වෙන්නේ, because it's just a hyperlink. So we have the do get. So there what we do is we have two hyperlink for insert and delete වලට hyperlink දෙකකුත් දාලා තියෙනවා. ඒවට map කරලා. ඊට පස්සේ මොකද කරලා තියෙන්නේ? We take a connection, database connection. Okay. From our utility class. Then we have a prepared statement for select all. Then we have while loop. මතක නේද කරන විදිය? Semester 1. So we are creating a sort of a table also. Table එකේ table tag එක ගහලා පළවෙනි th tick ගහලා තියෙන්නේ. So because this is a while, if you have 10 records, there will be 10 TRs, and each TR has 3 TDs. So first one is ID, second one is name, third one is balance. අපි 1 2 3 කියලා අරන් තින්න නැත්නම් නමින් ගන්නත් තියුණා. හරි? So then we close the connection, and also we want to close the table tag. යටින් table tag එකයි body tag එකයි HTML tag එකයි වහලා තියෙනවා. And in case of exception, it will give you the error message. Okay, right, simple as that. Right. So remember, when this is run in your web application, it is using this JDBC file, JDBC connector to connect to the MySQL. Okay, මෙයාගේ ඇතුලේ තියෙන classes වලින් තමයි database එකට connect වෙන්නේ. හරි, MySQL එකට connect වෙන්නේ. ඒක code එක අපි ලියන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. Right, so now I save it. Because this is servlet class, I most of the time restart in the server work. I'm restart in debug කියලා මේව කරේ. So therefore it will take more time. Okay, so I just cancel it and again do it. මට වැරදි option එක ගත්තේ මම. I will again restart once this is done. Okay, right. So it has started for debugging, but I just don't want it. I just want to say restart. Because debug, I don't want to do any debugging right now. Right now I have implemented the list functionality also. මේ HTML එක මෙතන හදනවා හරි. Response එකට out එකට. Right. So now you can refresh it. And you can see this is our final report. 9 Kevin, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And again, if you want, you can go to that new account now. Say 11 Say Tamara 100,000. Submit and list account, and you can see Tamara is there. Still, we have not implemented the delete account, which is mapped to the URL path delete HTML. මම ඒකත් දාන්න එතකොට වැඩි ඉවරයි. හරි. එතකොට insert delete තියෙනවා, list තියෙනවා, update එක කරේ නැහැ. update එක ඔයාට කැමති නම් develop කරන්න ඒක. project එකක් කරද්දී update එක කරන්න දෙන්න බෑනේ. Right. So that is කැමති නම් නෙමෙයි කරන්න. හරි. ඉගෙන ගන්න. ඉගෙන ගන්න ඕගොල්ලෝ ඉන්නේ. Right. So I will copy the delete related thing from my other project. Delete related one. So you have the delete HTML. ID විතරයි දෙන්න ඕනේ එතනට. So there you need to just give the ID and say submit. එතකොට ඒ අදාළ එක මකනවා. So it is submitted to the URL path delete. Therefore, we need a servlet which is mapped to the delete. And in our case, that is delete Java, which is a HTTP servlet. So you can say this is mapped to the /delete. And there we get a connection from our utility class and from the request, we get the ID. And then we execute the delete statement, right? Delete from table where this is the parameter which we are taking from our request and set it. Okay. And again, we are showing the list. එතනින් ආය අපි list එක පෙන්නනවා බලන්න ඕන කියලා. මෙතන HTML එකකුත් දැම්මනේ මම. ඒකන්ද මම restart කරන්න කලින් remove and update කරනවා. Remove, finish. ගොඩක් අය remove update කරාම restart කරන්න ඕනෙත් නෑ. නමුත් බලමු මේ පාර. Again need to edit. අපි restart නොකර බලමු. සමහරවිට restart කරන්න නැතුවත් හරියයි. redeploy වුණා. right, දැන් බලමු. Delete account. So this is my form. Say I want to delete. list කරලා බලමු මොනවද තියෙන්නේ කියලා. Say I want to delete my first one, Nimal. Okay. Delete account. Say 1. Okay. Submit. Successfully deleted. Then list කරන්න ගියාම 1 කියන එක තියෙන්න බෑ. Yes, 1 is not there. So this is how applications are developed. ඒවා තමයි අපි කරන්නේ. මහා ලොකු දේවල් කරන්නේ නැහැ. හරි. Software developers. So චූටි වැඩ ටික කරගන්න බැරුව තමයි final year project එකේ කට්ටිය ඇඹරෙන්නේ. Right. So that is how you connect to the database from our web application using JDBC. Okay. ඒක configure කරගන්න ටික තමයි අමාරු වැඩ ටික. code ලියන එක එච්චර අමාරු වැඩක් නෙමෙයි. configure කරලා දින errors එහෙම වලට බය නැත්තම්. Okay. Right. So that's it about servlet. I did not cover the session handling and cookies handling, which I kept for you because you guys are in our diploma level. Okay. You must be now independent. Right. So remember, when it comes to server-side development, web development, I told you there are 2 technologies. One is servlet, the other one is JSP. So servlet is a Java class. So especially if you are writing something to the response in servlet, the things are a little bit time consuming because you need to take the print writer. So remember, you need to take the print writer and just write all your HTML as println statements. Right? Println statement, which is time consuming. But if you have something like PHP where you can mix your HTML code and whenever necessary only call the relevant parsers and so on, that is much more easier. Right? So therefore we have similar to the PHP pages or ASP pages in .NET, we have a concept called JSP pages. So therefore, actually we don't use much servlet. We use more and more JSP pages. And when required, only we call the relevant classes or servlets. Okay. Actually, very rarely we use servlet as developers, because usually servlets are doing the overall controlling. In MVC architecture, controlling part is done by the servlets. But other than that, we are pretty much working with JSP pages for view and other classes for models and so on. So mostly software developers, web developers write JSP and other classes. Very rarely we write servlets. But servlets are used in your frameworks like Spring Framework, Struts Framework as control classes. That is the idea. Practically, but though we don't write much servlet, we must be really comfortable with what is servlet and how servlet work, because that is what the overall framework is doing. Otherwise, you don't understand what the framework is doing. So remember, the major task is, if you want to be a serious software developer, web developer, you must be able to handle complexity. Knowledge එක ටක් ගාලා ගන්න පුළුවන්. ඔයාගේ හිතේ හයිය තමයි වැදගත්. හිතේ හයිය ඒක එන්නේ problem solve කරලා ගණන් හදලා. හරි. ඒ වගේ දේවල් වලින් තමයි එන්නේ. එතකොට ඔයාට මේ ටීම් එකක් එක්ක ගිහිල්ලා වැඩ කරන්න පුළුවන්. නැත්තම් ඔයා ටීම් එකක් එක්ක ගියාට පස්සේ බලනවා කො ටීම් එකේ උන් කරන වැඩ මට කරන්න බෑනේ කියලා. මොකද එතන ඉන්නේ හිත හයිය කට්ටිය. Okay, so that is very, very important. Okay. So therefore, you must face challenges, right? Start doing things, right? Rather than reading books or whatever, right? So reading books doesn't give that confidence. So get into work, right? Set up the servers, start doing things. Right? So අපිට error message එකක් ආව කියලා අපි එකපාරට කලබල වෙන්නේ නැහැ. error message එකක් ආවම මේ ලෝකේ පළවෙනියට error message එක ආපු එක නමම නෙමෙයි. මේ error message එක වෙන කාටද ඇවිල්ලා තියෙනවා. පොඩ්ඩක් error message එක කියවන්න ඕන. හරි. ඒ උදාහරණයකද අද උදේ කවුරු හරි ස්ටුඩන්ට් කෙනෙක් අද උදේ. හරි. තාම chat එක ඇති. ඕගොල්ලන්ගේ බැච් එකේ ඉන්නද මන් දන්නේ නැහැ. මේ තියෙන්නේ. MySQL වැඩ කරන්නේ නැහැ කිව්වා. මං කිව්වා බලන්න වෙන එක රන් වෙනවා ඇති කියලා. වෙන එක රන් වුණා. මන් දන්නේ ඕගොල්ලන්ගේද? නෑ, semester 2 ස්ටුඩන්ට් කෙනෙක්. හරි. එතකොට කිව්වා මේ මගේ SAM සර්වර් එක වැඩ කරන්නේ නැහැ. මොකද ඒකන database subject එක තියෙනවා. So when I try to start the MySQL, it shows following error. කියලා බලන්නේ ස්ටුඩන්ට් හරියටම error message එකේ log එකක් එවලා තියෙනවා. event log එකක් එවලා තිබුණා. මේ තියෙන error message එකේ මේ error message එක කියවපුවම මට පේනවා කෙලිම කියලා තියෙනවා, do you already have another MySQL server running on port 3306? මේ error message එකේම කියලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් මේක යාට මීටර වල නෑ එකපාරට. අපිට error message වල දන්නවා මේක කියලා තියෙනවනේ කොහේ හරි. ඊට මම කිව්වා possibly some other MySQL server instance or other database already running. Go to the service in Windows and check. Yes, sir, another MySQL is running. Then what can I do? Should I stop that service? හරි. මම කිව්වා ඒ service එක stop කරන්න නැත්නම් ඒ MySQL එක use කරන්න. Either use that or stop it. Either use that or stop it and start the one connect to your SAM. මොකද එයා try කරන්නේ මේ SAM එකේ තියෙන එක start කරන්න. ඒක start කරන්න බැරි ඇයි? එයාගේ වෙන MySQL එකට යනවා. So වැඩේ හරි. ඔන්නෝම මේ හිත හයිය තියෙන්න ඕන, කායෙන් හරි උදව්වක් ගන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්න ඕන, කතා බහ කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්න ඕන. නැතුව එර එකක් ආවට පස්සේ සසර කරගින්න මහාන වෙන්න යන්න එපා. හරි. ජීවිතේ දුකයි කියන. Okay. Right. So that's it about servlet. So in the Sunday class, we'll do the JSP. It will take 1 hour. So then we'll move on to EJBs as well, enterprise Java bits. හරි. ඒක කරන අතරතුර අපි අර පොඩි topic දෙකක් ඉතුරුලා තියෙනවා. user experience වල එක topic එකකුයි නේද? ඒ ටිකත් අපි කරගෙන යනවා. හරි. data maybe we can finish the networking වල තව topic දෙකක් තියෙනවා. ඒ දෙකත් අපි ඉවර කරමු Sunday. I will try to have 2 sessions Sunday, both Sunday morning and afternoon. හරි. ඒතකොට morning afternoon තාමත් tsunami එකක් වගේ topic ටික ඉවරම කරලා දාන්න පුළුවන්. ඒතකොට එකක මේ enterprise application කරලා අනිත් එකේ අර network ඉනුයි අර ඉතුරු වෙලා තියෙන topic ටික ඔක්කොම ඉවර කරලා දාන්න පුළුවන්. ඒතකොට ඉතුරු වෙන්නේ අපිට තව project management topic දෙකකුයි මේ enterprise Java Beans topic ටිකයි විතරයි. හරි. Right. We stop at this point, right? Thank you.